If you're a health of a life coach who's ever felt like you just need to be more consistent to get better results in your business, then this is the episode of the show for you. We're going to talk about why consistency is really difficult, particularly if you are heart-centered, highly sensitive, or neurodivergent, and what you should be aiming for in your business instead. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help heart-centered and highly sensitive health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses, and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show, we're talking all about why just be more consistent is terrible advice. It's a terrible thing to ask of yourself if you are a highly sensitive or heart-centered coach. We're going to talk about why that's the case, how we can actually do something different to get a better result without beating ourselves up around not being consistent enough. So before we get into it, welcome back. This is the first show back after a little 2-week summer break. I've been away, I've been spending time with my children, we've had a fantastic holiday, and it's all been lovely. I have not been consistent, and we're going to talk about the differences and what we mean by consistent in a moment, but I have not been particularly consistent in my coaching business over the last couple of weeks, and that's okay. And we're going to talk about why it is okay, in fact, not to be consistent. So where does this desire to be more consistent come from? I think for most of us, we recognise that if we want to get results in something, we need to show up with some level of consistency. And really, what does consistency mean? If it means the way that we are putting effort in and doing that on an ongoing basis to a certain level, then that's what we're looking at with consistency. But usually what most of us want is we want consistent results, and there's a difference between how we have to show up and the consistency of the results that we get, and we're going to explore what all of that looks like in a second. So it's really helpful to think about what is it that you actually are saying when you think I need to be more consistent. Is it about wanting consistent results? Is it that you think that if you are more consistent and show up better, that you will get better results? It's really helpful to just dig into this. And as always with any of these kind of topics, there is a mindset point of view from this as well. And sometimes we struggle to either acknowledge the fact that we are actually showing up quite consistently and we're just not acknowledging that or seeing it as being good enough, or we have other blocks that are preventing us from showing up in a certain way. But we're going to explore what all of that looks like. First of all, why is being consistent so difficult, particularly if you are heart-centered, highly sensitive, or neurodivergent? There's all sorts of different reasons. First of all, you might be trying to grow your coaching business alongside another job, other work, a full-time, part-time job. You might not have a consistent number of hours available to work on your business. That could be one reason. You might also find that your energy ebbs and flows. So, and I think this goes for most of us, especially if you're a woman, you're probably not going to have consistent energy levels across every single week. Also, if you are a caregiver, whether that is caring for elderly parents, caring for children, that can all have an impact as well on your ability to show up with consistency. You also might find that if you are neurodivergent, the level of focus that you have can shift as well. And basically your capacity to show up is going to be different across different time periods with different things going on. You might also just find that you simply want to be out there living your life a bit more. And this happens to me in the summer, that I tend to not spend quite as much time in the business because I like to make the most of the good weather. That's really important to me to have the opportunity and time to do that. And also, again, over the summer holidays, as I've just mentioned, I've just had 2 weeks off, and that has been really vital so that I can spend time with my children and take care of them as their main caregiver over this period of time. So there's lots of different things that can come in and factor into how it is that we get to show up in our coaching businesses, particularly if we are highly sensitive, heart-centered, or neurodivergent. Sometimes you might get a vulnerability hangover. You might post some social media content and get a massive vulnerability hangover and need a retreat. You might have something going on in your life. All of these things can have a really big impact in how you show up. So asking ourselves to be more consistent, we need to take into consideration that actually there's some really valid reasons why that consistency can be very difficult. So how do we approach things differently? If we can recognise that actually requiring ourselves to be consistent, and I think what a lot of us have is, it's almost like, and this has just popped into my head, when I was a health coach, everyone said I just need a bit more balance. It was like everyone wanted to be more balanced, and I just need to have more balance, and eat more balanced meals, and it was all about balance. And I even had a little membership called the Balance Club, and everyone wanted to be more balanced. And I think consistency in business is a similar concept, in that we all have this vision of an equilibrium being achieved where we are showing up to a certain level, like all of the time consistently. But a bit like balance in health and well-being is that it ebbs and flows, and it's more like a pivot. It's more like a seesaw than it is like something that stays the same all of the time. So we're gonna pivot into different parts of our lives and our businesses at different times. And it's more about negotiating what that looks like, because I think what most of us really want to achieve with consistency is we want a consistent business. We want consistent results. We want to get clients consistently. We want to feel that consistency from our businesses. So a really good way to reframe this is, how do we create a more steady business? So instead of asking ourselves constantly, can we be more consistent ourselves, which is really difficult for all the reasons that I've just mentioned, again, particularly if you resonate with being highly sensitive, heart-centered, or neurodivergent. Instead, how can we focus on what it takes to build a steady business where we can pivot how we show up in our businesses depending on what it is that we've got going on at any particular time in our lives? So how do we create steadiness in our business instead of focusing on consistency for ourselves when we recognise that's actually really, really difficult? The first thing that we can do is we can focus on building out the strategies that create sustainability in our business. Now, I talk about sustainability all the time. It is not the sexiest topic in business, let me tell you. It's probably quite a hard topic to sell, but I am so big on sustainability because I've been doing this. I've been working as a coach, running my own business now for 14 years. Coming up very soon as I record this, because I remember that I registered my limited company on my 30th birthday, and I am about to turn 44 next week as this has been recorded. So I will already be 44 by the time this goes out. And it's been 14 years that I've been doing this and running my own business. And that for me is sustainability. The fact that I'm still here after a very, very long period of time when so much has changed, not just in what I do in my work, that I've pivoted, that I've changed and transformed, but in the online space. So when we focus on taking action around building out the strategies that do create the steadiness in our coaching businesses, that is what's going to underpin us being a bit more pivoty when it comes to how it is that we show up. So we need to focus on the strategies that build sustainability in our businesses, and a lot of that comes down to marketing. If this sounds interesting to you, please stay tuned, because next week's episode is going to be all about this. How do we build out a marketing plan that works even when we can't work for whatever reason? So stay tuned for that next week. Another way that we can focus on creating a steady business is that we can make sure that our business model is going to work for us. Now, I'm such a geek about business models. I think I've spoken about this on a recent episode of the show. Again, not a very sexy topic, because I'm not talking about here's how to make $15,000 months or whatever. But actually, this is the key ultimately underneath it all, is to have a business model that is steady, where your requirement for the delivery of that business model is doable for you, and that you can actually do that. And again, this is about taking into consideration your worst weeks, not just your best weeks. So again, part of having a steady business is building out that business model. And by business model, I simply mean, what is it that you're selling, and therefore what do you need to deliver on that is going to generate income in your business that you can actually do. And then another thing that we can focus on to create a more steady business is to look at the systems that support how we function. Now, this is one of the reasons why I have embraced AI. I've talked all about this. There's been episodes of the show, I will link to them below, where I've spoken about my relationship with AI and how that's shifted and changed over the past few months. Now I am such a fan of it because it really helps us highly sensitive, heart-centered, neurodivergent folks in our coaching businesses with creating the systems that we need to function. I have a whole program called Cozy Business Systems that is only available now inside Wholehearted Business. So do go and jump on the waitlist for Wholehearted Business, because all of this kind of stuff is covered in there. It is the program for building a coaching business as someone who is highly sensitive, heart-centered, and neurodivergent. So we'll get on the wait list. But inside there, we have a whole program that is around utilising AI as a system and creating the underpinning systems that you need to be able to have your coaching business function even when you're not functioning at your best. So as we've said, a better thing to focus on than trying to make yourself be more consistent is how we can build a business that is steady no matter what it is that we've got going on. And that's not to say that we can just disappear for long periods of time and not have an impact of that. But it is to say that we can build a business that is a bit more resilient to the lifestyle that we might need to have, that we are required to have because of what it is that we've got going on in our lives. So we've spoken a little bit there about why just trying to be more consistent as a coach is probably setting ourselves up for failure, especially if we are highly sensitive, heart-centered, or neurodivergent. And if we've got other things going on in our lives, that is going to make that quite difficult. And that actually instead, what would be better off focusing our time when we do have it is building out the systems, the strategies, and what it is that we need to have in place in our business so that it can be more steady and more resilient to the way that we need to shift how we show up. Now, this is not the same as the people who promise you can work like 2 hours a week from Bali and your business will make $1 million a year. This is not the same thing. And there is a link between how much time and energy you put into your coaching business and the results that you're going to get. There's no denying that. However, we can set ourselves up for more success when we do focus the time that we do have on those things that are going to be resilient and steady for us, rather than on spending a lot of time trying to focus on the things that are actually a flash in the pan in terms of the results that they're going to get for us. So what does a steady business actually feel like? What does it look like when we are running our business in this way? It looks like having spontaneous client inquiries. Now, a lot of people have coaching businesses set up where if they are not actively going out there and finding clients, they are just not getting clients. It's very much a manual process. And one of the things that I support my clients with is how can we create the systems that generate spontaneous client inquiries. And a spontaneous client inquiry is when you open your inbox and you see someone has filled in your contact form on your website and said, hey, I'd love to book a discovery call. And then they go on to have the discovery call and then work with you as a client. You haven't had to go out there and have a conversation with someone. You haven't had to go out there and do the work. There is work involved, obviously, but you haven't had to go out there and manually find that person. They are coming to you. And there's a very specific way that we do that. And again, I teach this inside Wholehearted Business. So there's a very specific way that we create our businesses to allow that to happen as frequently as possible. Steadiness also feels like no massive peaks and troughs with our income. And again, this does take time to build up. It takes the right business model to create this. But what feels so much nicer to our nervous system as a highly sensitive person is much more steady income. And again, there probably will be some ups and downs, but generally speaking, a steady coaching business will have much steadier income. And that can just feel so much better than something that comes in a rush and then disappears the next month. A steady coaching business feels calmer. You feel less stressed. You feel like you know that you can take a step back when you need to take a step back and everything's not going to fall apart. A business that is built on you having to be really super consistent, it can feel whenever you take a break, you're having to come back and start from scratch, and that can feel really difficult. So if you've ever noticed that feeling in yourself, like I've taken a break and it feels like I'm coming back and literally having to start from scratch, that's a really big indicator that you are having to really leverage your consistency to build your business. And that is not going to be necessarily sustainable for you. So we need to focus on the steadiness instead. A steady business is also reliable. And again, this comes into the fact that you can take a step back if you need to and come back and know that there's still something there. It still feels like there's a reliability, and it also feels reliable to the people out there. And this is a really important point, because for people to want to work with you and trust you and invest a lot of money in working with you as a coach, there needs to be a trust and a reliability there. And if your business disappears off the face of the planet whenever you have a rough week or whenever you want to go off and have a holiday, that's going to be problematic. So we need to figure out a way to build in reliability, and that's what a steady coaching business feels like. And steadiness in your coaching business also feels like nervous system peace and calm, because again, what we don't want if we are highly sensitive and if we are neurodivergent is a coaching business that just trashes your nervous system everywhere and everything that you show up and try to do. That is just not going to be sustainable for you whatsoever. That was one of the things that I really struggled with in the past, was feeling like just this awful stress, anxiety, like my nervous system really couldn't settle in my coaching business. And that felt deeply uncomfortable. And that's something I've worked really hard to fix and to get sorted out. And again, I teach a lot of these strategies inside Wholehearted Business. So just to summarize this episode of the show, stop beating yourself up thinking that you need to be more consistent. It is really difficult to be perfectly consistent. And again, in the same way that we try to be balanced all the time in our health and well-being, we are going to pivot. We're going to have times in our lives when we can go a bit more all in our businesses. We're going to have times when we need to pull back a little bit. That is okay. But it's only okay if you have a business that is set up to enable that to happen. And we do that through creating steadiness and through doing the actions when we do have the time to show up, through creating the things that are going to actually put that steadiness into place. So again, come on the Wholehearted Business waitlist. This is all about what Wholehearted Business is about and lots of other things. But go and check out Wholehearted Business. The doors are going to be open in September. And also go and check out next week's episode of the show, which is how we actually do this in practice and what this can look like, particularly with your marketing. So I hope that's been helpful, guys. I hope everyone is having a really great summer so far. I'm very excited to get into September. I know we're not quite there yet, and I'm trying to be in August as much as I possibly can. But as an autumn girly, I am ready for the 1st of September. But anyway, guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the show. As always, please leave me a comment if you are watching on YouTube. Let me know what consistency looks like for you. Do you beat yourself up around trying to be more consistent? And let me know. And if you are listening on the podcast, please pop me a DM on Instagram at wholeheartedlylaura over there. And I will see you next week, guys. Take care. Bye.